WILDR Folks, Alicia here. This week we're going to be talking about the anatomy of your shoes. We'll start by going over what all of the different terms mean so that when you see them on different websites or you hear a salesperson talk about them, you know what they're talking about. And then we'll go into some general recommendations as to what you should look for when you are out shoe shopping. All right, I've got two pairs of my shoes here to show you some of these definitions, and I'm also going to be popping a picture up on the screen to describe different things as well. But let's get started with anatomy. So when we're looking at a shoe, the first thing we want to look at is our drop or our rise. And that means the difference between the height of the back of the shoe and the height of the front of the shoe. This will be listed for different runners, and so it should be pretty easy to know what that number is just by looking. These, for instance, are a zero drop shoe. They have the same amount of height here as they do here. These are also a zero drop shoe, but you'll notice that these ones are a lot flatter and closer to the ground to begin with. So you're usually either going to have a higher back here and lower down here, or you're going to have zero drop, which just means the same at the front and the back. You will not see a negative drop. You'll never see the front of the shoe having more than the back of the shoe. When we're talking about this height, it is called our stack height. So your stack height is the height of the shoe from your foot to the ground when you're standing in your shoe. These have about 11 mils of drop, whereas these are a 19 mil drop. So there is a difference in that height beneath my foot. Second part of the anatomy is going to the arch of the shoe. That arch belongs right here. I'm sure you know that already. Some shoes are going to have more of an arch than others. We want that arch to match or feel comfortable under your foot when you're standing in your shoe. Next thing we can look at is our toe box. The toe box is the part of the shoe from just in front of the joint of your big toe forward to where your toes are. Your toe box can either be wide or it can be a narrow or race fit, and that comes down a lot to preference. However, you want to make sure that your shoes aren't so narrow that over time they're kind of giving you a bunion-like appearance. So make sure that that toe box is wide enough for you. Next thing we can look at, outsole of our shoe. The outsole just means the part that interacts with the ground. Your lugs are going to be anything that sticks out of the shoe from here to the ground. Some shoes will have bigger lugs. Some shoes will have smaller lugs, and this shoe is also very worn out, which means the lugs have disappeared a little bit, but they are going to give you grip and traction if you're on terrain that is a little more slippery. Underneath that outsole is going to be your midsole. So this runner is kind of nice for looking at that because our outsole is black, our insole is very light gray, and then, our midsole is a light gray, and then our insole is like a black color. Actually missing or not there on a really minimal shoe. So these are not a minimal, they're not a minimalist shoe at all, and so they have a midsole. If you're going with a more minimal shoe, these ones definitely are a more minimal shoe. They're gonna have almost no midsole at all. Every shoe will also have a certain shank stiffness. So most runners you're still going to be able to twist them. However, with a more minimal shoe, there's going to be a lot more twisting that can happen compared to a shoe that has a little more cushion and a little more firmness in it. You want to check that out so that you know what that's like for you. And you'll also want to look at the bend here. The stiffer we are here in our medial post, which is the area where the shoe is the thinnest, it'll have a medial post. The more supportive we are there, the less movement you get in the whole shoe. And then lastly, we also have the laces and the tongue of the shoe. This whole upper can be made of different materials depending on the durability and breathability that you're looking for. I might also record a video on different ways we can lace the shoe to support the foot. But if you have run with me before, you know that I have quite the habit of letting my laces come undone. So I'm gonna have to practice that before I can preach about it. And now that we've talked about the anatomy of our shoes, let's talk about some general recommendations when you are choosing or wearing a shoe. I will reiterate that these are very general recommendations because the fit of your shoe is going to be specific to a lot of things. The first is your foot. The second is what surfaces you like to run on and have run on. And the third is your running history, because making a big change to your footwear takes time and practice. We can't just jump from one type of shoe to another without some gradual acclimation to that new piece of equipment that we've got with us. So in general, when you're buying shoes, remember that if you are going to be doing longer runs, so that means over 75 minutes to 90 minutes, your foot could grow up to half a size. So we want to make sure that there's enough room around the shoe that you feel comfortable in it, even if that foot gets a little bit bigger after you've been pounding on it for 75 minutes. Second thing to remember is generally a softer midsole will result in a stiffer leg. So if we have some lower leg issues, we might want to be choosing a stiffer shoe. If we have some upper leg, knee, and above issues, those might be resolved by going with a softer or more flexible midsole. And the second thing I will reiterate, if you are someone who has a shoe with a big drop difference, so you've got a stack height that's quite big up here and quite small down here, if you're going to transition to a zero drop runner or to a very minimal shoe in general, it is going to take time. I like the feel of a lighter, smaller runner, but it took me over a year to go from my last pair of shoes with a more traditional drop to a more minimal shoe. And there's ways that you can do that, but I won't get into that here. We'll do that in a different video. And the last thing to remember, now I'm not advocating that you buy 100 pairs of shoes. However, some variety in your footwear is a good thing. The same way we don't want to be just sitting at 90 degrees at our ankles, knees, and hips all day. We probably want a variety of footwear so that we're putting different stresses on our feet and our legs and our whole body when we're out for a run. We also want to really consider what kind of surfaces am I going to be running on, and buy a runner that is specially designed for those surfaces. That is my general overview of shoe anatomy and some recommendations that you can take with you next time you go shoe shopping. Whatever shoe you choose, I hope you get out there and get wilder with them.